Thank you, Ismail Vadi. We'd like to launch your book. Thank you. R.C. Naik, thank you. Shaida Sidat, Shaida, we'd like to start. Thank you. Derek Hanekom, thank you. So nice of you to come with a jacket. It's wonderful.
Respect.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a very special event, a very special book launch, but also to a very special venue. And I want to thank Trade Routes, the Valley family, for having us here today. In 2008, almost at the same time, this is where we launched the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. And I'm happy to say 13 years on, it's still going strong. But 2009, we had Uncle Kathy's 80th birthday year, a huge celebration. And that really kicked off his foundation. We almost had a home for the AKF year. Very generously, land was offered to us, and we decided then to take up another offer. That didn't materialize. But for us today to be here in this COVID climate, I think is a statement about the need to get together, the need to continue with work, because it's so much more easier to stay at home. And somebody was saying, you can put the Zoom on and you can disappear. Nobody will know whether you're there or not. At least here we can see when you fall asleep. So it's just wonderful having everybody here. But to welcome us, let me ask Yasin a few words from yourself, our host. I know that you are more than capable of speaking for 20 minutes, but I'm going to give you 2. You've welcomed us here today. You've allowed us to use this. Why?
Good afternoon, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Minister Hanekom, thank you for making your time available. Sean Bolton, who I've always been scared of since school days. He always shouted me, even through the activism days when we were being hauled away to Lenasia police station together. Sean was there to keep us in line because we were young and bushy-tailed youths who thought we knew everything and could do anything. Trade Route is not us or Valley Family or Trade Route Development. It's everybody. It's community, it's yourselves, it's stalwarts like Ismail Vadi, Sean Bolton, who I might add hasn't aged much except for a little bit of snow on the mountaintop. He hasn't aged much in all these years. So yeah, it's actually a pleasure to welcome you to this book launch. Not just any book launch, but a book launch of a politician who's been in politics for over 27 years. He served tirelessly without any need for fame, recognition, blue lights, X5s. In fact, I've had many interactions with him. And if ever I were to enter politics, I'd like Ismail Vadi to be my mentor. Because he says things in a very quiet way, but in a very effective manner. and his words resonate with me all the time, is that do things diplomatically and with a good word, and you'll get further than if you jump, shout, and scream. He often tells me not to shout. I got a warning from him not the other day, and the words were, don't fight. Please, don't fight. So, thank you everyone for coming. It's nice to see so many people honoring Mr. Vadi, who does phenomenal work and has served you, myself. I might add, when he was MEC, I didn't see as many potholes as I do now. So let's give him a big round of applause for that. Anyway, I don't know where he is, or if he's walking around, or if he wants to say anything, but I think I should have hired a photographer for him, because he's taking his own pictures. Uncle Ismail, I'm going to hand over to you, back to the Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Bolton.
Thank you, thank you. Eunice, can we get the video clip from Reniva? There's a very special message here from Reniva Fourie. She's a public policy analyst, but also a long-standing member of the ANC and the Communist Party, and is sending this message for us here today. So let's listen to what Reniva has to say and her reflections on the book and on Ismail. Thank you.
Good afternoon and warm greetings from Damascus, Syria. Permit me to congratulate Dr. Ismail Vadi on his 2 books, Thambi Naidoo and Family, Struggle for Non-Racial Democracy in South Africa, and The Political Backbencher, which is being launched today. Both books are very well researched and well written. Thambi Naidoo and Family is written in a slightly more formal and academic style. It depicts South Africa's history of resistance by succinctly but comprehensively chronicling the roles of 4 generations of the Naidoo family in our liberation struggle. So this provides the reader with a deeper insight of the inner workings of the ANC, the SSCP, Umkhonto we Sizwe, the Progressive Women's Movement, the Trade Union Movement, the UDF and its affiliates, as well as the key campaigns of each of these entities. So one is also reminded of the values and the qualities of the activists at that time, that of non-racialism, non-sexism, honesty, discipline, selflessness, and being non-materialistic. The Political Backbencher is less formal and a lot more personal, given that it is an autobiography. There is a tendency among some to elevate leaders above society. Within the liberation movement, however, we have always had a culture of activists being rooted in communities or the lowest levels of the specific sectors that they found themselves in before developing organically into leadership positions, rising higher and higher within a given organization of time, but without losing touch with their true base. So the Political Backbencher underscores this practice and this view that leaders must be embedded within broader society. And it draws on the example set by Comrade Vadi, and also by revealing the personalities of others who occupy different leadership positions within our movement. Because I am familiar with the persons that are mentioned in the book, or some of them, I could relate to and delight in the various anecdotes. And there were many times when I even laughed out loud. But in addition to the smiles, the Political Backbencher also conjures nostalgia. And that is why I called it a feel-good book. Both books invoke hope. Currently, many of us are feeling despondent. Our liberation movement is experiencing one challenge after another. And like the book Thambi Naidoo and Family, the political backbencher amplifies the essence of our movement's traditional values, aspirations, and expectations in terms of the qualities of our leaders. It reminds us of our achievements and all without justifying our failures. In Comrade Vadi, you have a leader who is ethical, who is not arrogant and pompous, and who consistently seeks to serve. In describing his family and his upbringing, he states, if there is an expression that captures who we are, it is service to humanity. He projects no sense of entitlement and regards his leadership opportunities as a privilege. This is depicted in how he describes his appointment to serve in the National Assembly of the First Democratic Parliament. Comrade Vadi states, I sat there transfixed. Hope, joy, and trepidation were mixed within me. I was overjoyed at being elected as a member of Parliament representing the ANC. Reflecting on these expressions that represent some of Comrade Vadi's qualities is so important. In this current period, we have a strong need to be reminded that this country does have good leaders. And that is why I'm so appreciative of the fact that Comrade Vadi wrote this autobiography. By opening up about himself, he is restoring our pride. Because of course, we as the liberation movement will claim that we produced this intelligent, humble, and hardworking leader. By opening up about himself through this autobiography, he is also restoring our dignity, as we can use Comrade Vadi as an example to demonstrate that there are leaders in our liberation movement who possess sincerity and integrity. The political backbencher is also a necessary, accurate characterization of our history. There is much contemporary discourse about our democratic transition and the formation of the Constitution, which is inaccurate or dislocated from the reality of the conditions that prevailed at the time. I would like to urge emerging scholars and political parties that perceive themselves to be more radical than us to read the book. Even though it is written by a comrade, the political backbencher is not propaganda. And despite it being written through a personal lens, the facts are presented objectively. Those who appreciate well-contextualized history should read the book. In fact, they should read both books. I also recommend that scholars of governance should read the book, as it gives insights into the role of Parliament and developments in the education and communication sectors in a clear and accessible manner. The political backbencher is an excellent product. Well done, Comrade Vadi. You are a true inspiration to us all. Thank you so much.
The Vadi fan club is in full swing today, yo. And to continue in this trend, the chairperson of the board of the Kathrada Foundation and a former minister, he'd like to think that he's a current minister now, with all the touring and things that he's doing. Any excuse to drive from Joburg to Cape Town, Derek is on the road. But it takes 2 weeks to get to Cape Town or to come back to Joburg now. Meneer Hanekom, your reflections on the book, you wrote the foreword, but also you've been in Parliament, so you know what the story is about.
Thank you, Sean, and hello, everybody. So my name is Derek, and I once, long time ago, I used to be a minister, but that's ancient history now. I'm not here to just sing praises for Ismail, because I think you've just heard them. I'm not here to persuade you to read the book, because you've just heard very, very compelling arguments as to why you should read the book. But I'm going to say a few things, maybe maybe counter all the nice things that have been said about Ismail and just insult him a little bit, you know, because everyone says he's a humble man. So let's see how he handles a few insults, okay? No, seriously. He is a man, Ismail, that I admire a great deal. I have read the book, so I'm not going to tell you more about the book. You have to read it yourselves. But it is a book well worth reading. And it does give you insights into, you know, the dynamics in Parliament. The parts of Parliament that you don't see on the news, you don't see on the television, you don't read about, the story behind the story, if you like, but also the human story. Ismail is, I know you won't believe me, but Ismail's actually quite a bit younger than I am. Like 10 years or something like that. So Ismail was really young when he went into Parliament. He was in his 30s. How old were you exactly, Ismail? How old were you when you went into Parliament? How much? 34 years old. He wasn't the youngest member of Parliament either. There were others that were quite a bit younger than he was. So it was a very different Parliament from the Parliament we see today. It was dynamic, it was exciting, it was vibrant. It was a Parliament that, you know Archbishop Tutu, when he talks about a rainbow nation, it was truly a rainbow Parliament. We had people there. It was a kaleidoscope of colors and languages and cultures and religions, and especially, I might say, in the ANC itself. Some of the other political parties tended to be white only or tended to be black only, and the ANC lived up to then, and we are struggling to do so today, lived up to its non-racial character. It was reflected in the way we were represented in Parliament. And you know what? It made us feel good. And so there were many things about that Parliament that stand out in our memory. Now, Ismail had to agonize over a few things. He tells you about it in his book. For me, it was easy. You know, you go to Parliament, you put on a suit. Ismail thought, now, what the hell do I do? I don't normally wear suits. And he describes it in his book as his Islamic garb. He said, now, do I or don't I? Do I have the courage to go there and wear what I normally wear? And he did have the courage. And I've never seen Ismail wear anything other than his Islamic garb. That's how we remember him. If he had come, Sean, if he had ever come to Parliament wearing anything other than that Islamic garb of his, that white outfit, we would have thought he's in disguise. We would not have recognized him. So Sean and others, my compelling memory of those first 5 years, although Ismail was there for 16 years as a backbencher, he's still catching up with me, of course. He'll probably go back to Parliament just to catch up with me, because I was in Parliament for 25 years. So I have paid my dues. Ismail, you haven't paid your dues yet. So my compelling memory of those first 5 years is of a foursome, not only Ismail, of a foursome sitting there. It was Ismail, it was Uncle Kathy, it was Isu Chiba, it was Dr. Isap Jazad. And of course, Isu, you'll remember Isu. Same as Ismail. White shirt every day, only a white shirt with buttons open till down here somewhere. That was Ismail. That was Isu. But the thing about this foursome, all strong individuals, but the thing that stands out is a group of real leaders, but who were incredibly humble, really humble people, and very engaging people, very disciplined. They were always in Parliament, never absent. And they were always there to help and to contribute and to engage with people who were struggling to settle down in Parliament. That's what I remember. So 16 years later, he becomes, after so many years of being a backbencher, being a backbencher doesn't mean that he didn't have serious responsibilities while he was in Parliament. He did. And it doesn't mean that he didn't make a very serious contribution while he was in Parliament. He did. But then he became an MEC in Gauteng. And I can honestly say you're quite right. It's not just about the potholes, because I think the municipality takes responsibility for that. But Ismail was an excellent MEC. So the bad news for you, Ismail, is that you're still a youngster. So I am entitled to retire, but you are not. And a more serious note, the parliament that we see today, often people think of it as, you know, a bit of a circus. Because you see some of the fights, the bond fights, you see some of the insults hurled from the floor, people insulting each other and battering each other. But actually, although it isn't the parliament that we had then, it is still not a true reflection of what parliament is. There are many parliamentarians who really do hard work while they're in parliament, and you don't see it. It's the work that's happening in the committees. But, and I'm going to end here, Shan, what we have seen, unfortunately, from that 1994 parliament is a deterioration. A deterioration that we have to somehow, we can't just accept that it's on an ever downhill curve. It can't be. Somewhere we have to take stock and say, this is not good enough. This is not us. We've got to fix it. We've got to make it better as we are trying to fix other things that have gone wrong in our society, in our country. And that is what makes me, serving with Ismail and others who are here, makes me so proud and feel so good about being a member of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. By the way, in these book launches, you learn things, you learn little things. Like, we know that Shan is a bully because he bullies us. But I didn't know that his bullying goes back so long, you know, that he's been a bully all his life. No, truly, and more seriously, Shan has been a leading force. The Ahmed Kathrada Foundation would never have been the influence it is today, would never have had the impact that it is having if it weren't for Shan's leadership. I think we have a good set of comrades and colleagues who serve on the board, and I think for all of us, it's a huge privilege to serve on the board. But now, we must think, we've got Kathrada Foundation members sitting over here who are doing excellent work, working with the youth, promoting non-racialism, etc. Some of them, Ismail, some of them, Shan, also have to be the members of parliament of tomorrow. There have to be the political leaders as well. We know that we pride ourselves on our independence, but at the same time, do we just say, oh, well, you know, let the riffraff go to parliament and us good people will be in, you know, in business or in the non-governmental sector? No, we need good political leaders, people of caliber, people of quality. And some of you young people sitting here today, you're going to be it. We certainly hope you're going to be it. So with those far too many words, thank you very much. Ismail, well done. And go and get the book and read the book. Thank you.
No, thanks, Derek. As you're talking about Ismail and his white garb, you know, it struck me, if you had been a member of the EFF, you would have had to have had a red one with a red helmet. Just the visuals of that, I think, would have been powerful. And that white beard. So Christmas, I mean, you would have been fully employed. Somebody that I suppose today we all look up to. You know, when we started, Prema was elder than many of us, but he wasn't as old as Isu. With that whole generation gone, Prema is really the one that we now all look to. We all would have as a reference point on critical issues. And each day, as each day passes, you hear snippets about his life that is new. And I think it's just important that Prema talks about this book, talks about Ismail, because their relationship goes back, I think, to the early 80s, if not earlier. Prema?
Thank you, Shan. I've now graduated to be an elder. And as our first speaker said that Ismail has been in politics for 27 years, I know Ismail for more than 40 years. And that's how long Ismail has been in politics. I just want to start off in congratulating Ismail for writing this book, and also want to congratulate Zebi, who's put up with Ismail sitting on the bed until the wee hours of this in the mornings writing. Thank you, Zebi, for this. You know, Ismail, a boy that was born in Kliptown, grew up in Greyville, went to university, did a master's degree, and today has a doctorate. Now, for those of you who don't know that background of Kliptown and Greyville, maybe not understand the significance of this, but believe me, I used to always tease Ismail to say, I'm sure you're the only guy from Greyville that went to university. I know that's not true, and there are many others. I got to know Ismail probably somewhere around the early 1980s, when we used to have workshops, we were planning, and our policy of non-racialism, non-sexism, Ismail was drawn to those kinds of policies. We formed the Transvaal Indian Congress, and Ismail worked tirelessly towards that. We formed the the Federation of Residents Association, the FRA, and Ismail was very much part of that. And on many occasions, when we were meeting till late at night during the bus boycott days, and tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock we needed a leaflet, and we used to turn to Rash, who is here, and Ismail to work on this leaflet, and behold, the next morning, 6 o'clock, that leaflet was ready to be distributed at the bus stop. That is the kind of dedication that people like Ismail and others that brought us here. We had many, many successful events in Lenasia, big public events, and Ismail was very much part of that. So Ismail wasn't just an intellectual writing on his bed. He was also a grassroots activist. He understood people, he understood the needs of people, and he played a role. When we started our activities in Lens, we decided that we needed to take up grassroots issues. And we formed the Federation of Residents Association. There was an area in Lens called 2 Rooms. And Ismail worked tirelessly with other comrades in 2 Rooms for us to mobilize these people. We took these people on a bus to Pretoria, so that we could demand for better housing. When lights were being switched off, we took those issues up with the Johannesburg City Council and journalists. And I'm telling you these things that, many of us know Ismail. We know him as a nice guy. But what I want to say is that he is also a grassroots thing. There are very few people who understand how to pitch politics. We must never speak above people. People need to understand us. And from the 1980s, right up to the unbanning of this, we in Lenasia, and I can say it with pride, were the dominant political force. Nobody, whether we worked to the Residents Association, and Ismail was a founding member. Believe it or not, he was a young man at one time. And he was a founding member of the Lenasia Youth League. He was a founding member of the Progressive Teachers Association. So he belonged to all these various organizations. And we began to introduce a progressive politics amongst our people. So Ismail, you are a comrade of all of us. You have served this community with distinction. And I hope one day that this community will recognize you for the role that you have played and you continue. Ismail became a parliamentarian, as Derek had said. And every week, traveling to Cape Town, and Isu needed a smoke very desperately. And you'll ask Ismail, isn't it time for you to pray now, Ismail? So that Isu could have a smoke, because Ismail didn't allow Isu to smoke in the car. You know, and yes, because of that, Ismail, Isu, and Kathy developed a bond, a friendship that lasted right up to those two comrades passing. So Ismail, I don't want to say too much. Thank you, congratulations to you, Zebi, Zakara, and your family for giving you to us, for allowing you to play the role in lands which you have played. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prema. I think the next speaker is quite special, because one of the things that I don't think many of us would understand, what is the family impact of somebody leaving every Monday, coming every Thursday night, or whatever it is, week after week for, 16, 17 years? It must have an impact. You know, as a child, your father is a migrant. You see him now and then, and maybe you see him on TV. So we've asked Zakira to come and talk about these things, just to give that kind of insight. But as she comes, you know, Prema, many of us owe our own sense of discipline to Isma. He would say, 5 o'clock, we're going into the stadium in Lens, we're going to do spray painting. And at 5 o'clock, you have to be there. And over time, that kind of discipline became entrenched to be used in other ways. But it was also not very easy. As part of that youth league crowd, you had to almost ask for permission to go away on holiday from him and a number of other people. Your life really wasn't your own. And for some people, even relationships required that kind of approval. One of the things that Ismail and I did, which I'm embarrassed about, you know, we had an activist, Girish, and we just couldn't understand Girish's militancy. Because when the UDF had its rally here in Lens at the Nurul Islam and at the Gandhi Hall, Girish came out with the ANC flag, although his face was, and we just couldn't understand this militancy. And we thought that he was a security agent. Ismail and I went to my sister and said, break this thing off. Fortunately, she didn't listen to us, because we really didn't have anything of substance other than a gut feel, but we were wrong. But that's the kind of hold that he had on many of us, the kind of discipline that was entrenched. And you see it in many ways in the way in which we work in the foundation today as well. But Zakira, people have said all the good things. Hopefully you're not going to continue in the same vein. Just tell us what was it like not having this chap around? Was it, I'm sure it was heavenly. Maybe the weekends were stuff that you dreaded, or maybe it wasn't. Let's hear.
Thanks, Shan. So, I'll be speaking about the impact of all of this on our family life, how public life impacts family life. My siblings, one who's listening on YouTube and the other who's here, I think they'll both agree that when you're born to a politician, you learn to walk a tightrope between public life and private life. The golden rule is that whatever is private is not really private. It's often very public. So the things that other teenagers could get away with, you know, bunking class and that sort of thing, we couldn't get away with it very easily. We were often called out by teachers, by others, hey, Vadi, what's your class doing? Why is your class not listening? And we often had to answer for everyone else. So we required very sophisticated plans to go about our thing as teenagers. As I grew older, and many of you who know, Shan is speaking about the discipline of arriving early. I'm usually very late, so I drive at a very fair pace, But one of my constant worries was that I'd be stopped by the metro cops, and they'd look at my license and they'll see the surname Vadi. And then I'd be into trouble, and the media would report that the MEC for Transport's daughter has violated the rules of the road. So my surname is something that I've always wielded very carefully, both as a journalist when I was at the Rising Sun, and even now. Recently, I had to visit the OUTA offices, meet up with the staff there, develop links with the foundation and OUTA, and everything went off without incident until the end of the meeting when Wayne Duvenage pulled me aside and said, "This Ismail Vadi, are you related to him in any way?" And if you know, my father at that time was involved with the e-tolls issue. Wayne Duvenage was anti-e-tolls. But luckily, Wayne Duvenage didn't hold a grudge against me. And I think all of us in our family have been very careful about this because on the one hand, while people know your surname, they know your family, it can also be in politics, and politicians are often a source of great anger for people sometimes. So a few years ago, there was an issue on the highway where rocks were being thrown. Someone in our community passed away because of it. And people were angry, so they pitched up at our doorstep. They had a bucket load of rocks that they collected, and they dumped it on the pavement. So I think we've become very careful about that. But it's not all doom and gloom. It's not always very bad. I think my sister will tell you that we often fell asleep at random people's houses when political meetings ran late into the night. But we came back from those meetings, even though we may have slept or not listened, we came back after that having learned a lot. So the issue of Western Sahara, for example, before it became a very popular issue in the community to do solidarity work around, we knew about it. Our friends at school would talk about fashion and movies and whatever else. But at home, we were learning about Palestine. We were learning from Ismail Ibrahim about his trips to Iran and Sri Lanka. Mohammed Baba, who's not here, we would revel just listening to the local gossip around politics in the country, who was standing for what position, what were all of the things happening behind the scenes. So my nieces and nephews are here. They'll tell you that in their speeches at school, they often talk about very political things, and the educators and teachers sometimes don't appreciate that in our home, our dinner table conversations are not really about the things that families sometimes talk about, the ordinary things. It's often about political debates that results in an uproar, and I think my sister-in-law and brother-in-law must have been quite shocked when they married into the family to see how vigorous these debates would take place. So those of you who know my father, you know that he loves food. And even more than that, he loves hosting guests at home, sometimes to the disdain of my mother. But our home was always an interesting place. We had very interesting characters coming from Uncle Prema and Uncle Isu, who were regular guests, the occasional visit by Premier Makura. We had the engineer of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, and we even had an international boxing hero, Hassam Rahman. So there's a lot of glamour that comes with public life, even for a backbencher. People recognize your family, they want to treat you nicely, they invite you to events. There was always excitement in the family when my father returned home from an international trip with gifts and wonderful photographs. And it's very easy to get swept into it all. And we see the daily reports, of the abuse of power and privilege in our society. We see how politicians live lives and lifestyles that are so different to those on the ground. It's easy to become used to power, but power is a very fickle thing. So despite all of that, we have to keep it in check. We have to maintain humility and simplicity. And foremost in mind, there's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad about not aspiring for position. If you desire position, then you're on your own. But if you don't desire position and it's given to you by the public as a trust, you will have the help of God. So in this book here today, you will read about my father's involvement in the Portfolio Committee on Education in Parliament. And my father never allowed us to go to private schools. My sister went for 1 year to a private school, but our schooling life was always through the public education system. And he felt that he couldn't be in this portfolio committee advocating for public education when his own children were receiving private education. But this decision, I believe, really grounded us. It taught us anything beyond what a formal private school education would have given us. It taught us about engaging and playing with other children across race, religion, culture, gender, and importantly, around class. But as important as it was for my father to keep us grounded, I think we had the same responsibility towards him. So my sister will tell you that a couple of years ago when he was the MEC, he suddenly had drivers, he had security personnel, he had a state car. And one day she saw one of the security personnel carrying his bag inside the house. So she called him up and she said, "Show me your hands." So my father put out his hands thinking, what on earth is this about? And my sister asked him, "Do your hands not work? Can't you carry your own bag?" And I think that was a lesson for him to remain grounded. This book speaks about my father's transitioning from an ordinary activist in Lens to a parliamentarian, and the constant traveling between Cape Town and Joburg and its impact on our family life. I was born quite well after my brother and sister, so I knew my father as, this chap who would come home on weekends with a loaf of olive bread from Furno's Bakery at the airport. But I think that the traveling had an impact on my brother and sister because they knew him to be at home during the weekdays. For my mother, what it meant is that she had to become the father as well. So she had to take us to school and madrasa. You'd often see her flying through the felts of Lens, trying to make up time and get us to school on time. She had to change the light bulbs, look after mother-in-law, look after us, look after the pets, do all sorts of things that normally would be shared between two people. And I think that sometimes the politician is looked at for their greatness, but the family support structures around that isn't. They aren't recognized. So my mother, Femida, who's here, and Nadama, my grandparents, my aunts, and many, many others, the domestic helper at home, many others. Her name is Maria, and others in the family, other comrades and activists who are here, who often lend their hand. But public life comes with unexpected changes. So in 2010, I was on Hajj. My mother was at home and she called me to say, "You know what? He's going to be at home now." So for the last 2 decades of our life, we were living what I call the porridge lifestyle. Once my siblings got married, my mother and I would make porridge for supper. We'd sit and eat, watch TV maybe, and then go and sleep. And suddenly my mother had to deal with a full-time husband. It meant cooking supper. It meant I couldn't go out sometimes late at night. I had to explain to both parents now where I was going. So I think her anxiety this time around was quite different to when she cried the first time that he left for Cape Town. I don't think it's peculiar to politicians, but all working parents who sometimes tend to ignore their children because they want to further their careers, they get so involved in their work. But I think to my father's credit, he was always there for the speech contests, the awards evenings, the fishing trips, and the very adventurous holidays that we've had. Despite not being in formal politics any longer, my father remains a political animal. Even the great amount of time that he now spends with his 4 grandchildren, even our cats at home, this does not succeed in taking him away from his political work. Ask my mother, she'll tell you that she still complains about holidays being appropriated for political networking. So in conclusion, my siblings are always asked, "Why don't you guys follow in your father's footsteps, My brother is a journalist, but now he's strangely gone into cattle farming, and my sister is a teacher. I'm the only one who, a little bit through the work of the Kathrada Foundation, has strayed into political activism. But I think we don't really follow in his footsteps because we know what comes with it. There's a great weight of public responsibility and accountability. It reminds me of something associated with one of the most regarded caliphs in Islam, Umar, who was asked one day, "Why doesn't your son follow in your footsteps? Why doesn't he occupy public office?" And his response was something along the words that, "Isn't it enough that one of us in our family have to account before God for the public trust that has been put on us. So more than anything else, I think that's really what's at the heart of walking the tightrope between the private life and the public life, and that's public accountability.
You can see Zakira should actually be following in her father's footsteps. Grounded in ethics, and that's what this country needs. So I'm going to do a short Q&A with Ismail. Mr. Vadi, if you will come and take the one side of the table. Ismail, just explain the title, because it says political backbencher. It doesn't say parliamentary political backbencher. So I assume backbencher to you has a wider connotation than just being a parliamentary backbencher.
It's like an exam question. The conventional term is just backbencher. The other day I phoned Mac Maharaj and I said, I've completed this book and it's called The Political Backbencher. And he said, why political? So I said, I had the backbencher. Then when I discussed it with Zakir and others, they said, no, the political backbencher. But I think what it reflects is really the nature of my activism. I've always been a behind-the-scenes activist. For those who know me since the late 1970s, I've never assumed any formal executive position. And even the choice of photograph. There are other photographs, but I chose the photograph of Walter Sisulu. If you really want a backbencher, but the key strategist in the history of the ANC, it's Walter Sisulu. Yeah, Mandela and Tambo were the charismatic frontline leaders. The charm, the stature and all that. But the key organizer in the liberation movement from the, I would say early 40s, right through till he was imprisoned, the brains trust of the liberation movement was Walter Sisulu. And, Walter was released with Kathrada and them in 1989. If he wanted to go to parliament, there would not have been a single objection. But he chose not to. And even when in 1990, when the ANC was unbanned and he had his first conference, he didn't want a leadership position on the executive committee. But circumstances, because there was competition amongst a younger generation of leaders, Walter Sisulu was made the national chairperson of the ANC. So I think it's very deliberate. It just reflects the nature of my activism, a background boy, a backroom activist.
No, thanks, Ismail. What Zakira didn't talk about was his love for chips. So I'm not sure whether that, whatever is on that table has chips there. But that's almost the staple diet, although this is not the point of discussion. As I told you, for me, the thing I enjoyed most about the book is that it answered a question that has puzzled me from the 94 elections. So 1992, 93, we were all working in the branch. Ismail goes into SAT2. And I don't know if Resh will recall, at some point we have a public meeting at Just Center. And Ismail almost disrupts this thing, and he's angry. And he's angry with the ANC, and we just couldn't figure out what is driving this anger. And your book answers it for me. But maybe you want to explain just that transition, you go into SAT2 and then becoming a parliamentarian, your reservations at the time, and then how you overcame those reservations to eventually accept becoming an ANC parliamentarian.
All right, so I think all of us were really swept up by the unbanning of the ANC. And, you know, we very early in 1990 had two massive events at the Lenasia soccer stadium. The first was when Walter Sisulu came to the soccer stadium, just after they were released in 1989. That undoubtedly was the biggest in the history of this community, probably 14 or 15,000 people. And then I think it was November 1990 when Mandela came to the Lenasia cricket stadium, and that too obviously was, I think, 10 or 12,000 people. So, I mean, all of us, all the young activists, we were young then, but all of them are here, Bali and so many others. We were the first branch to set up in the PWV region for the ANC. The NEC meeting of the ANC was held at the Gandhi Hall, Shan. As the branch, we hosted, I think, one of the earliest NEC meetings in the country. But then something happened. And this was the scandal involving the late Winnie Mandela. She was the head of the ANC's social welfare department. And at the time, the story broke that she was also having a relationship with Dali Mpofu. And that obviously created quite a strain in the relationship between Mandela and his wife, which eventually resulted in a formal divorce. But the issue of holding Winnie accountable, that became personally, a very important issue very early on. And quite clearly, the ANC, in its normal way, tried to manage it and all that. And it took quite some time. There was a clear reluctance on the side, at least for me then, for the leadership to look at this issue and to take action. In the end, of course, Winnie had to forsake her position as the head of the Social Welfare Committee. And, Dali was dismissed from his position. And he threatened to go to court, and he never went to court. So Dali Mpofu has got a very embattled history with the ANC. I think people have to go back to some of those early years and to see where the political trajectory started and where it has ended up with him, particularly. But what that showed for me is that, in a sense, this was the earliest signs for me when the ANC was unbanned, that there were rank-and-file members and there were others in the ANC. And the rank-and-file members, we're quick to take disciplinary action, but we're very reluctant to take on when leadership needs to be questioned and to be held accountable. And I think the rank-and-file, all of us then, we were so caught up with the excitement and the euphoria, and I think we were too trusting of our leaders. And that has brought us to where we are today. Just now, I heard the news. Daniel Ortega in the Sandinista movement in El Salvador, Nicaragua. Just today, I heard that the former deputy leader that was so close to Ortega is now being imprisoned or been put into some kind of detention. And there's a fallout between Ortega and this famous poet and cultural artist in Nicaragua. So how is it that comrades turn against each other? I think it's when the principles become blurred. And if we can apply the principles consistently for rank and file and for leadership, consistently and uniformly, the movement will stay its course. But we can't have two sets of principles, some for leaders and some for rank and file. And the way in which we dealt with the whole Zuma issue, from Inkanla to the first when he violated the Constitution, the judgment made by Justice Mogoeng, etc., indicates that when we can't apply principles uniformly across the board, we are entering dangerous terrain.
Thanks, Isma. In your book, you deal with the issue of, as Derek has spoken about, grappling with how to dress for the opening of Parliament. I think it's just important to take this audience into the kinds of thought processes, discussions, debates. And when you look back today at what the opening of Parliament has become, what could it have been had everybody gone through the same kind of thought process that you had to go through?
Yeah, it's like all the exam questions. I think our starting point is that we are, all of us, we're not one single personality. Embodied in us are multiple identities. We carry different identities. So by birth, I'm of Indian origin, Indian South African. By religion, it's Islamic. By generational, at one stage I was youth, now we're becoming quite old. By gender, I'm male, somebody else is female. By class, I was working class, in fact, poor working class, but we're middle class now. So identities are never fixed, identities change. And one of the things that I must say for young people, never be ashamed of your identity. Never. Somebody can call you a coolie, it's okay. And sometimes Malema can say what he wants to say about Indian South Africans. We're not ashamed of our identity. What matters are the values, the principles, and the beliefs you hold, not your outer appearance. And I think that's absolutely important. So we don't have to sacrifice anything to be like somebody else. Just be yourself. But carry your identity with dignity, with humanity, and with humility. That's absolutely important. The choice had to be made. I had to make that choice when I came back from pilgrimage, the first pilgrimage to Mecca. In 1992, I was working at Wits University. And I had to make the decision, do I change my dress? Because the Hajj did have quite an impact on me in terms of my spiritual thinking. And I came home and I told Zebi, take out a dustbin packet, take all my clothes. The denim jeans, the t-shirts, put everything in the packet and give it away. I had one kurta, one Islamic dress that day. So I had to almost design a new wardrobe. So that was 1992, June or July 1992. And then came 1990, I had to go to Wits. So the next day, Professor Penny Ensland was the head of department. I walked in there and thanked her for the leave that I was given. I said, I'm banker. I said, look, I'm going to dress like this. Is it a problem? She said, why should it be a problem? This is a university. So that became the new norm. And then came Parliament. April 1994, I think we were sworn in on the 10th of May. And the decision was, do you go back like this, or do you go back in your suit, or whatever the Western style would be? And I think I say in the book that if this is to be a true democracy, if this is a democracy or a society that recognizes cultural, religious, linguistic diversity, then it shouldn't be a problem for me to go how I want to go. And I must say, to Parliament as an institution, but particularly to the ANC, my dressing, my religious beliefs has never, ever been a problem. Even when I became the Premier, sometimes during the fasting month, there was cabinet meetings, provincial cabinet meetings. MEC, sorry. Yes. And the Premier, I would tell him, Premier, it's time for me to pray, or it's time for me to break fast. And his words would always be, we respect Ismail, you can go. That's the democracy, that's the kind of society I think we should all work for and defend.
Now, one of the things you don't cover in your book, and we don't have too much of time left, is your constituency work. I'm sure during the period as a parliamentarian, and even as an MEC, there must have been weird stuff that people have come to you to take forward or to go and fight on their behalf? And as you answer, just give us some of the kind of insights into the non-parliamentary work of a parliamentarian.
The community work or the constituency work is the lifeblood of parliamentary politics. Maybe today I think a number of MPs, I don't know all of them, but some of them shirk that responsibility, and it's wrong. You're not there in public office for yourself. You're in public office for people that you're supposed to represent and work with. So this grassroots thing that Prema was talking about, it was drilled into us in the 1980s, that you never lose your base, you never lose touch with the grassroots activism and base. Over the years, I mean, there's so many, I can write a book just on constituency work. But there were some beautiful, very moving things. I don't know if Zarina will remember. Zarina Mutala, she was in the parliamentary office for 12 years. But one day, I was in the office, and an old lady pulled up, climbed the stairs because we were on the first floor. She battled. She came there huffing and puffing, and she took out a lunch bar chocolate. I said, Zarina, this is for you, and this is for Ismail. So I said, Kala, what is this thing for? What are you bringing this chocolate for? She said, I just came to thank you that you helped me with my pension. Now that is the joy of politics. Not the big developments, not the big things. It's the direct personal impact that you make on people, and you help them to change their lives or their circumstances. Like that, I mean, there were so many students who needed bursaries. I would go to some of the business people and said, can you sort out this guy, please? Or this lady, they need help. They're credible students, I've seen the results. And to the credit of the business community here, and so many of them, without hesitation, they never questioned. They always gave somebody a sponsorship. So those are the kinds of things. This mall, I don't know, Uncle Ismail is here, but Said Mia, once the land was acquired, there was the issue of gaining access there was a sewer line or something running right in the middle of this place. The railway servitude, something. And I mean, it was just tough. The department wouldn't want to hear. Khabs Masonkutu was the MEC for Roads and Transport. Both Shan and I went. Subsequently, I think it was Ignatius Jacobs. Now, this is an important point. We made that representation in the public interest. There was never a moment that either Shan or myself or any activist from this community went behind the scenes to these guys and say, if this deal comes through, what's in it for us under the table? It was done in the public interest, and I hope they benefited financially from it. Today, I know I've been in touch with Yasin quite regularly when this mall was under threat with the looting and all that. I asked, okay, what if something like this is destroyed, what's the value? And he doesn't want to say. But it's not a small amount. So the thing is this about public representatives. You never keep a hand under the table. For the next generation of leaders that are coming, keep your hand on the table like this. Never put your hand under the table. It will be the biggest mistake you make in politics.
Wow, that deserves an applause. I mean, oh, what's... No, with this kind of enthusiasm, none of you are going to eat. We'll just finish, you go home now. There was a request from Sean, and what I'm going to do, anybody here who wants to either make a comment or a reflection, but 30 seconds. I don't want speeches. Don't read the whole book now back to us. Just a 30-second contribution from anybody. Sean, you want to kick off?
Good afternoon, everyone. 30 seconds, I'm going to try. But Ismail was the goalkeeper. That's his sport. I was 14 years old and I was 12 years old. He was my English teacher. I wrote a poem called Apartheid is a Crime, Only God, no, Apartheid is a Pain Only God Can Explain. And I Ismail, it was a free writing thing. And then I got back that thing and it said thought-provoking. And I said, yo, what did I do now? Because I didn't even know what the word provoking was. So I had to go and find out now what it was. And Ismail has planted a seed in my life from the age of 12. There's 2 occasions that Zebi was with us. We went to Azadville, where Satya was doing a speech, and total injustice. He lost that competition. But the talk back, the investment that you made in my life is huge. The activism, who I am, working for the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, you had a role to play. You took me to Nurul Islam Hall when the UDF, Tutu was a speaker, I think. You parked your car far away from the wall. And I asked you now, why is he parking his car? And you must walk. Myself and Zebi be walking now. And after years, I've realized that. So for me today, I never knew that I'm going to have this opportunity to thank you. I'm indebted to you for my activism, totally indebted to you. And to pay that debt, I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Anybody else? Any other thoughts, reflections, questions? Second round. Good?
After listening to Ismail, a lot of things have resonated. And I think the most important thing that resonates, and former minister and I have had quick caucus, and we hope we get all of your support here, that I think Ismail not only is a mentor and an inspiration to politicians currently and future, but I think he needs to come out of retirement and enter the realm again. Please, Auntie Zebi. You know, today politics is all about self-serving. What can I get? Where can I go? How much can I take off the table before my term is over? And it's not simple men in kurtas walking into parliament. It's Armani suits and Gucci shoes. I mean, we all know who we're talking about. So I think Uncle Ismail can be an example for the people who are going to lead this country in the future. For if it's not like people like him, Madiba, Kathy, Isu, Chiba, Prema, Derek Hanekom, and the list, Jeff, the late Mayor Jeff, and the list goes on and on and on. We're going to breed a nation of self-serving people, and this country is finished. So, Ismail, Derek, it's not a request. It's actually your responsibility towards this land to make it a better place for us all.
Okay, Ismail will respond to that. And the wonderful thing is that with changing legislation, he can stand not on behalf of a party. He can actually stand as an independent. And so can you, by the way. No, so can you. Don't put it onto his shoulders only. And so can many other people here. And that's what I think is the most, if there's one big change that's coming, is this change to our electoral system that I think is something we are going to have to grasp in a very significant way. Anybody else? Bindi, 30 seconds. And then Fakir will come. And then Nez, as an MEC, just a quick reflection. Lenny, now you want to come as well. Okay, but we'll keep it very, very short. Nah?
Okay, thank you, Shan, and the guests. I see the veterans of the movement. Thank you. Comrade Ismail, today it's about you and what you did for the community, not only for the organization. Not only for the organization, but for the community. It is people like you, that taught us principle, that taught us that we cannot take a brown envelope and elect a leader, but we need to elect leaders that has best interest of the community, that are going to serve the community with integrity and principle. And leaders like you today, Comrade Derek, are not nominated on the branch level because of these brown envelopes. So we need each and every community member and a civil organization to hold those who are elected into position of power to be accountable to the community, because we cannot be voting cows and elect dead-end people who are not going to take the Rainbow Nation somewhere. So we need you. I agree with Zain here that you guys need to come back, because there are new generation that is coming and they do not know how to serve the community. I have not read the book yet, and I'm very interested in what the book has. Thank you, Shan, and thank you for the work that the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation is doing for the community and for the entire country by holding the leaders accountable. If we have a dead end or a self-serving leader, it has to account. With the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, wherever I go in the meetings, they cry and say, Ahmed Kathrada Foundation is trouble. I say those are the dead ends who are seeing Ahmed Kathrada as a trouble in the organization. And we will also create our own organizations that are going to assist the Kathrada Foundation to hold each and every individual that is elected into power, a comrade minister, to account to the people, not only to your legislation, but to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, there was, before I come to your father, there was somebody else. Lenny, you wanted to come and say a few words? You weren't the person carrying the bag, nah? Okay. 30 seconds, please, Lenny.
Thank you, Shan. Congratulations, MEC. You know, I could never call Ismail. I worked in that office for 9 years. It was a real honor and a privilege. You know, always wanted to be a civil servant. And me, I'm not only passionate about service delivery, I'm obsessed with it. And, you know, when we got into that department, it was absolutely diseased. And, you know, we have to thank Ismail Vadi for cleaning up the mess. You know, I always tell people I've never met any other MEC in this province who dismissed so many senior civil servants. Not one. I haven't seen anyone in this country. But to work with Ismail was absolutely a pleasure, and it was absolutely professional. But I have to make a confession now, MEC. You know, I told you that I'm obsessed about service delivery, and this one particular guy from Home Affairs, I gave him an inquiry for 3 years. There was a child that came from Swaziland, and she needed a passport and an ID, and he didn't solve that problem. So one day I called him, and he gave me a whole lot of words, and I swore him. So he went back to the MEC, and he complained about me, and the MEC said I must go and apologize to that man, and I said I'll never apologize to him. But I must confess, MEC, I did swear that man. And just one last thing, Shan. A few years ago, MEC, I gave you 100 Rand. You didn't give it back to me. So I'm going to ask for a discount on the book now. Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny. Nez? Nez? No? Okay. You want to say a few words? No, you can't have the third round now. You can't allow for that. No.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to tell you something, and I can vouch for one thing. Zarina, Shan, Ismail, when we were building the mall and we needed their help, they were always there without stretching their hand out for a handout. That I can vouch for because I was there present. He never asked for anything at all. So Zarina and Shan. Shan troubles me from time to time, but that's part of life. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Ismail. And I will say something with regard to the railway line and regard to the roads. They were instrumental in getting this all organized. Thank you.
Okay, I think we come to the end of this. You've heard some of these reflections. Whether you want to make any closing comments, these are all warm, glowing tributes. Oh, Fakir, sorry. You've published how many books so far now? 24. Ismail, you on 3, nah? You know, one of the good things was when Ismail didn't get back into provincial government, I said to him, this is the best thing ever, because his calling is a historian. And I think you've started to now see some of the stuff that's coming out. Because that's his real craft. He can fix potholes, but he can do damn better history than most other people. So, but you've set the benchmark, 24, and he's at 3.
Thank you, Shan. Good afternoon, everyone. I said to Ismail when we chatted on Thursday, I said, I hope this is not the end of the books, because I shared with him yesterday, Shan. On Thursday night, he sent me the electronic version of the book 2 weeks ago already. And I've been so busy with my friend Semi Naidu, we publish all his books, with a 25th book, which is due in a couple of months' time. So I said to Semi that I got to go now. I got to get off this call. I got to read the book. I started at 11 on Thursday evening, thinking I'll spend about 2 hours reading 1 or 2 chapters. I finished at 3:30 in the morning, having read the entire book, because I couldn't put it down. I've known Ismail since the days when we were teaching together, not in the same school, but we were both teachers in those days. And I watched him and Prema and others when I was a rookie reporter on the Lenasia Times, doing the community stuff then already, and followed him all these years. And I thought I knew a lot about Ismail's backroom work or the backbenchers' work. I found out I knew a fraction of what he had actually achieved. This book shows exactly what a real backbencher does for the community. So congratulations for that again. And I want to tell you, Ismail, Shan's allowing me this about the books. We just today, Semi and I, released 2 books. One is the 30-year history of the Sabri Chisti Ambulance Society in Lenasia. The other is 35 years of the Gandhi Walk. We had hoped to do that at the big events they have each year, but as you know, COVID has not allowed that for 2 years. So we handed it over to them today. These are free books. So any of you who wish to have a copy, you're welcome to send me an email. I'll drop you the digital copy. And this is the kind of history that we need to record. I do a different kind of history in my 24 books. Shan, as you know, community work, community organizations, individuals like Uncle Kathy, Madiba, etc., what they've done related directly to this community. And the next one is going to be Bollywood, which Ismail loves, and Shan does too. So we'll let you know about that. But when Semi heard that we are coming here, I need to tell you, he printed additional copies of those books. He said that, I explained to him, Ismail, about our Reading Tree project, excellent project. And he said, let's give them a few. And I said, well, the Kathrada Foundation is hosting this thing, you've got to come there. He said, let's give them some as well. So he printed 100 additional copies each, which was given to you. And I hope that you'll spread it around as well. Thank you, congratulations. And I may be up there when you do your 25th, but I'll be looking down at a fellow author and saying he listened and he did more of his history. So thank you very much, Shan.
Thank you. I just want to thank Ahmed Ismail, par excellence, the audio visuals here, the live streaming that has taken place today, JYM, sound, the Fakir and Sunny for the books. Semi for the books, Apple Print, the venue and the catering, trade routes. Thanks for making this possible. But most importantly, all of you coming out here today, and I'm not sure how many of you, this is your first outdoor venture in terms of this COVID period. I think it's just wonderful to be doing things in a way that we like doing in the foundation. Zoom is fine, but it can't beat this kind of interaction. So over to you, Ismail, to close off today's event, please.
Just from my side, thank you very much to everybody for coming today and for supporting a little bit of work that we're doing. I'm reminded of Isu's words. Isu served 10 years in Parliament, and when Kathy retired, he said, look, it's time for me to go. At that stage, David Makura was the provincial secretary of the ANC in Gauteng. And he approached me and he said, look, can we speak to Isu? We know that the traveling from Joburg to Cape Town is quite difficult. He's getting old. He's been so many years on Robben Island. He needs to spend time with his family. But we want him to come to the provincial legislature, and that's Isu Chiba, and to serve as the chairperson of SCOPA, the Provincial Standing Committee on Public Accounts. And will you speak to Isu? And when I spoke to Isu and I tried to persuade him, his words to me were, Ismail, it's time for us to hand over to another generation. It's better we serve the time that we serve with dignity, rather than reaching a point where somebody kicks you on your butt and pushes you out. You can't die as a parliamentarian. We've done our share. It's time for us to move on, and another generation must take over. So I think he had a point there, that we can't, if I look at the scramble for placement, for candidate placement now in political parties, it actually shocks all of us, that there's such a rush for people who want to get in. And the whole notion of service is just not there anymore. And when your time is up, you must go with grace. And then there's Yunus. Yunus is not here. Yunus Chamda. Because I told him that, look, it's over with me now. It's 25 years. He just said, Ismail, listen here. There's life outside of politics, man. Really. Don't be afraid of anything. And my main fear is that I'm a busybody. What will I do with my time? Well, Shan has said, I found the mission. So I'm writing. We've done the Naidu book. It has been a great privilege and a pleasure and a joy for me to do the Naidu book. We didn't have the same kind of launch because we were in COVID period, but I'm hoping that people will still buy that book. It's an important book. We've done this one. Next month, we've got the memorial booklet on Ahmed Timur. This year will be the 50th year of the death in detention of Ahmed Timur. It has been in the news again in recent years. So that booklet is coming out next month, Shan. I hope that the printers are working on that. We're busy with a history of the Transvaal Indian Congress. There isn't a full history of the TIC, so that work is being done. And then the local politics. The Lenasia Youth League, the residents' work, the kind of grassroots work. So many people, I've got school kids, learners coming and saying, we've been asked to do a project for local history. But we don't know the history of the temple. When did the temple start? When did the church come? Which was the first church in Lens? People are forgetting. The older generation are gone. So to revitalize and to recapture local history, I think the next few years I want to spend time on that, more for the younger generation. And then the work with the Ahmed Kathrada Youth Club. There's a core of young leaders across communities here. Some of them are present. They do remarkable work, remarkable activism. If we can just mentor them, just a little bit of nudging and pushing, a little bit of the discipline that we suffered under, really under Isu. I wasn't the Stalinist, Isu was. But the discipline is important. Without discipline, there's no organization. So to inculcate that discipline in the younger generation, I think that's really our calling. I'm not keen, I don't think I want to go back to public life, as a public representative. I think that the new blood that's coming up, Derek made the point, it's not good enough that they're just in the youth club, in the Kathrada Youth Club. They have to push the frontiers, and they have to see themselves becoming political representatives of our people, of our communities, even if it means standing as an independent, and we will back you for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks. There's some refreshments, but I also just want to thank R.C. Naik. R.C. has just left this big bundle of stuff that Isu went to the National Archives, and he was doing research on Gandhi and documents relating to Gandhi's time in South Africa. And this is the stuff that Isu got them to copy, and RC is now handing this over to the foundation as part of our archives. So just thanks to RC, I think is gone as well. Comrades, friends, thank you. The books are there, the refreshments is there. The author is here to sign and take pictures and whatever else. Thank you all for being here today.